A little bit late today. I was just about to get ready to start, and then I heard this little voice in the back of my head. I poo poo, I poo poo. So I had to go take care of Hannah. And now that story is immortalized. It's terrify her in her teenage years. All right, so let us see here. So we are sitting again in a parenthetical pause, right, in the timeline. We're going back up to heaven. And really, I think what we saw in chapter 9 was what John was seeing from heaven. But this is basically like, this is not something really taking place in the earth. It's up in heaven. Let's just move through it. We probably can knock out all 11 verses of the chapter today. So, good morning, everybody. It's good to see you all. So it says, I saw another mighty angel coming down from heaven, clothed with a cloud, and a rainbow was on his head. His face was like the sun. His feet were like pillars of fire. So this first verse, some scholars over time have thought that this was speaking of Jesus. And the description here of power and majesty, it does sound somewhat like the descriptions of Jesus we've seen. Yet it does say an angel. And one thing that to me jumps out is the word another. So in verse 1, we have the word another, and there's two Greek words for another that are translated another in English. And there's allos and heteros. And heteros, we might be more familiar with, like the term heterosexual. And the idea is of a different kind. Heterosexual, you're attracted to someone of a different kind. And allos is of the same kind. And so, as an example, if you wanted to have another drink, well, allos would be I'd have an addition of the same drink I just had. Heteros would be another one. I didn't want this one again. I want another one. And so this word here is allos. It's another angel of the same kind. And it's just worth noting. So I believe this is just an angel that's being seen here. Verse 2, it says he had a little book or small scroll open in his hand, and he set his right foot on the sea and his left foot on the land. He cried with a loud voice as when a lion roars. And when he cried out, 7 thunders uttered their voices. Now when the 7 thunders uttered their voices, I was about to write, but I heard a voice from heaven saying to me, seal up the things which the 7 thunders uttered, and do not write them. The angel who was standing on the sea and on the land raised his hand to heaven and swore by him. So again, this is the angel swearing by the Lord, not the Lord himself speaking, who lives forever and ever, who created all things that are in it, the earth and the things that are in it, and the sea and the things that are in it, that there should be delay no longer. But in the days of the sounding of the 7th angel, when he is about to sound, the mystery of God would be finished, as he declared to his servants, the prophets. And so John is seeing a vision. He's seeing an angel down on the earth. And again, this is one of those examples where this is John's view from the heavenly scene. An example that might maybe tie this in with other Bible stories we're familiar with is multiple times we see God or Jesus speak, and someone hears it clearly, but others don't. When God, for the third time, 3 times in the Gospels, we see God audibly give his approval of Jesus. This is my son in whom I'm well pleased, right? It was at his baptism. It was at the Mount of Transfiguration. And then it's also when he entered into Jerusalem there on the Passion Week. And it said there in that 3rd time that the people could hear something, but they didn't hear the audible words of God. Another example is when Jesus meets Paul on the road to Damascus. In fact, just like here, where it talks about in verse 4, the 7 thunders, they utter their voices, and these loud voices, it talks about the thundering voices of Jesus. And and it's the sound that's being heard. The people who were with Paul on the road to Damascus, Acts tells us that they heard the sound, but they couldn't discern voices. They couldn't tell what they were hearing. Paul heard it loud and clear. And so this just shows us that sometimes essentially the spirit realm, it opens up and a message is transferred, but only those who are intended to get it get it. And here, John is in heaven. He's been raptured up into heaven back in chapter 4. And so he's seeing things from the side of the spirit realm. What are we seeing down on earth? It's a good question. That's the idea, is that some of these things that take place, what we see as the ripple effect or the after effect of what's going on in the spirit world, it's hard to understand. But he's seeing this, and it says these 7 thunders, they're not to be written down. He says, don't record this. This is something special, John, and you get to see it. But everyone else is just going to have to wait and see. And so God has chosen to keep what exactly takes place here in chapter 10 a secret. But we know that timing-wise, it's good to know that things are wrapping up. And perhaps this is taking place right at the 3.5-year mark. I would not be surprised if chapter 10 is what's going on in the spiritual realm, while chapter 11 is going to be what's going on earth during the tribulation. And so we're seeing what's going on. We know that the countdown is coming because he says he's going to delay no longer in verse 6. And in verse 7, then the mystery of God would be finished. Well, that made me think of 1 Corinthians chapter 13. You see, 1 Corinthians chapter 13 talks about how, verse 8, whether there are prophecies, they will fail. Whether there are tongues, they will cease. Whether there is knowledge, it will vanish away. For we know in part and prophesy in part. But when that which is perfect is come, then that which is in part will be done away. It's when I was a child, I spoke as a child, understood as a child, and thought as a child. But when I became a man, I put away childish things. For now we see in a mirror dimly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then I shall know as I am known. The idea is that eventually the mystery of God would be done. Mystery goes away because Jesus will arrive. And when Jesus arrives and we see him face to face, he is that which is perfect. That scripture in 1 Corinthians 13 is talking about the day when we see Jesus face to face and we're in his presence, at which point the spiritual gifts will have no need because we've got Jesus in our presence. We've got him face to face. I don't need to prophesy when God's right there and he can just talk to everyone openly. And so that's the idea, is things are going to be coming quickly to an end and they're going to delay no longer. Mystery's going away. That which is perfect will arrive. And so the last few verses, in verse 8, it says, then the voice which I heard from heaven spoke to me again and said, go, take the little book which is open in the hand of the angel who stands on the sea and the earth. So I went to the angel and said to him, give me the little book. And he said to me, take and eat it. It will make your stomach bitter, but it will be as sweet as honey in your mouth. Then I took the little book out of the angel's hand. I ate it, and it was as sweet as honey in my mouth. But when I had eaten it, my stomach became bitter. And he said to me, you must prophesy again about many peoples, nations, tongues, and kings. So, Ezekiel chapter 2. In Ezekiel 10, 8, 3, here we go. Let's see, verse 9. And when I looked, there was a hand stretched out to me, and behold, a scroll of a book was in it. And he spread it before me, and there was writing on the inside and the outside, lamentations, mournings, and woe. For chapter 3 of Ezekiel, verse 1, it says, he said, son of man, eat what you find, eat this scroll, and go speak to the house of Israel. So I opened my mouth, he caused me to eat the scroll. And he said to me, son of man, feed your belly, fill your stomach with the scroll I give to you. And I ate, and it was in my mouth like honey and sweetness. Then he said to me, son of man, go to the house of Israel, speak to them the words. And so he goes and he speaks the words. And let's see here, verse 12. Well, it talks about the bitterness in his stomach in verse 14, and I went in bitterness. And so the idea is we see a real similar connection. Um, ah, Paratrooper analogy my dad gave. That's true. The different viewpoints and seeing things from the sky versus seeing things from the ground. It is very different. And from the sky, you get such a better overview of everything going on. I'll do another analogy based off that too, and then. But you see with Ezekiel. Sorry, Ezekiel. So this is where he talked about so much revelation. It's just allusions from the Old Testament. It doesn't tell us why eat the scroll. I think there's something symbolic and significant about eating the scroll. But again, I think Ezekiel, when Ezekiel had his visions of God and he saw the cherubim, Ezekiel saw a lot of the same stuff John saw. I think Ezekiel was literally handed a scroll and told to eat it. It was sweet in his mouth, but there was a bitterness afterwards. And I think John, he literally saw an angel, gave him a scroll, told him to eat it, sweetness. So there's something there. There's something symbolic and significant there that this has happened more than once in the Bible. So that's, I think, the main thing I want to take away from this is it's not some weird, unique thing to Revelation. It's something God has done on more than one occasion. And both people were then called to go and continue prophesying and preaching to many people. So there's something about that, about taking God's word, taking something, and it is sweet, but it also has a bitterness effect. So we see that in both places. So one other analogy my dad reminded me of that I think I picked up years ago, I think it was Kent Hovind is the one I remember learning this from. But it's that, even when we look at time, this is a little different, but just about how God is outside of time and how God could be like in a helicopter above a winding river, like in the Grand Canyon, or there's one in Utah, I know, that just winds round and round. Now, from the helicopter, you can look down and you can see early in the river, late in the river, and you can see rafts all along the river. But if you're in the raft on the river, there's all these winds in the river. You can't see what's in front, you can't see what's behind, but from up top, you can see it all. And so John has got this vision and a clear vision of what's going on in the spirit realm. Tomorrow, chapter 11, which will be pretty cool, and we'll probably take a couple of days to work through that. There's some good, neat stuff in there. So that said, God bless you guys. Hopefully you can apply this stuff. Hopefully you can understand it. And again, I'm trying to just focus on the plain stuff, the stuff that's the easiest to understand. And if you haven't had an opportunity, I know you guys follow us on Facebook, but, all this is on YouTube on the Revival Church page. And so if you've missed any of these on YouTube, they're all in order. So you can go straight through the book of Revelation all the way up to chapter 10 where we're at today. And then if you hit the little button in the top on Facebook and you're watching on Facebook, you can follow and get those notifications so you can join us daily. So hopefully we'll continue moving through this book together. We're like halfway through. It's pretty exciting. Almost halfway through. So God bless you guys. Have an amazing day. And I'll see you guys to do chapter 11 bright and early tomorrow. Adios. Still hot.